Thank you so much for being here for this panel discussion, Pathways to Success within Higher Education Distinguished Panel. My name is Stella Smith. I'm a postdoctoral fellow at the University of Texas at Austin, and I'm also one of the dissertation award winners. And I have the distinct pleasure to introduce your moderator for today's session. Dr. Sheila V. Baldwin is an associate professor of English at Columbia College Chicago, where she teaches African American literature and culture. Her research areas and publications include critical race theory, racial identity, cultural awareness, and shared leadership and organizational change. She has presented at a number of national and international conferences, including the American Education Research Association, AERA, the Association of the Black Psychologists, the National Conference on Race and Ethnicity in Higher Education, or NCORE. Her leadership positions include serving as president of the American Association of Blacks in Higher Education and the Columbia College Chicago Faculty Association. Dr. Baldwin earned her EDD in Educational Leadership and Organizational Change at Roosevelt University. She also received an MA and BA degree from Columbia College and an AA from Harold Washington College. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Baldwin.
Thank you, Stella. I always have to represent the community colleges. I have several friends, presidents, colleagues from the community colleges, and they always talk about how they get shortchanged. So it goes everywhere I go. So I gotta, represent, okay. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This session it promises to be a really fruitful one. And it is co-sponsored by the Creative Writing Department at Columbia College Chicago. And I have to say, this is an especially pleasing statement for me to make because we have a poetry department. We're recognizing and honoring Amiri Baraka. I went to them and they shifted me to the Black interim chair of that department. And he said, "Yes, ma'am." And I was like, "My brother, I really love you." Okay, so today we honor 3 people, the remaining awardees who have not gotten their play to this session, during this conference. Dr. Joyce E. King, Dr. William Bill Cox, he wants us to call him Bill. And additionally, as I just said, we're honoring Amiri Baraka, who we're going to do this posthumously because he made his transition on January 9th of this year. The program will include a clip of him speaking, which I'm really fond of this clip, and I thought that you would enjoy it also. But before we begin the program, can we have a moment of silence in his honor? Okay. A lengthier bio of the honorees appears in the program book for your review. But to begin the session, I would like to offer a real quick summary of the honorees, the 2 honorees that we're going to focus on right now. Dr. Bill Cox is the president and co-founder of Diverse Issues in Higher Education. Together with his partner, Frank Matthews, Cox/Matthews Publications is celebrating their 30th year in producing a bi-monthly news magazine that focuses on concerns that affect people of color. Now, within that 30-year period, the magazine changed its title and focus from Black Issues in Higher Education to Diverse Issues in Higher Education, a pretty significant change. On behalf of the Cox-Matthews group, Bill is here to receive a special honor from AAHBE for they have been rather, our longest and continuous sponsor in our 34-year history, which includes the association being being the Black Caucus of the American Association of Higher Education, and in our current form as AABHE. So they have been our ride or die partners, okay? Okay. So Dr. Cox, would you like to come forward? Okay. And you need to sit on the end, okay. Dr. Joyce E. King holds the Benjamin E. Mays Endowed Chair for Urban Teaching, Learning, and Leadership at Georgia State University, where she is also Professor of Educational Policy Studies. Additionally, she is the president of AERA, the American Educational Research Association, making her the second president, as you heard this earlier today, that we have honored today. Okay, we get two of y'all at once. We doing the bomb, okay? So she is receiving the Advocacy Award because her career has led her to advocate fiercely. In a quiet way, sometimes you got to be that way, but she's receiving the Advocacy Award. So Dr. King, would you come forward, please?
Thank you.
You're so welcome. Okay. So this year's conference theme is Pathways to Success, the New Faces of Race and Gender. The theme implies that acts of racism or sexism have occurred in the past, and that those acts were sufficiently dealt with, and that we no longer have to experience those acts again because there is a new set of concerns that we are facing. So before I ask you to address that question, are the old acts of racism and sexism dead and buried, or are we experiencing an entirely new and improved set of racist and gender-related issues? Okay, so I would like for each of you to answer that. But before I do, I just want to say that the format of this program will include Q&A from the audience. Okay, so which one would you like to answer first?
Well, if the question is there a new form of racism going around? Absolutely, no doubt about it. And the first thing, all we have to do is take a look at our president. I mean, it's right there, and it's not behind the back, it's not behind the curve, it's just up front and in your face. Take it or leave it, whether you like it or not. This is the way it is. And this is what we have to become cognizant of and become aware of what is happening right on our noses. And that's one of the reasons why I'm very happy that we do what we do and with diverse issues in higher education by trying to bring news and information to the forefront for our readers and supporters.
Okay, I would like to get into what you do on your job specifically, but I did want to just kind of raise some issues, raise some topics, have a little fruitful discussion on the subject of race and gender. So, Dr. King?
Well, I'm not so sure that it's so new. I think it's, for our generation, maybe there was a window. I'm thinking, I went to Stanford University in 1965, the Civil Rights Movement, Black Studies and all of that. So we had a kind of a revolutionary context. I remember when Amiri Baraka came to Stanford, for example. I mean, there was a fervor. So that has been calmed down as more of us have come in to higher education. But I would say one of the ways that I see this phenomena working is that there are more of us, people who look like us, who can be instruments of that racism.
Okay.
And whether well-meaning or malevolent in intent, we often encounter someone who looks like us representing those institutional commitments.
Could you say a little more about that? Because that's a key point here.
Well, I'll give a very specific example, and I don't have to name any names, but I served on the Curriculum Commission for the state of California for 4 years. And that's a textbook adoption state where you are looking at textbooks, and that was one of the arenas for my advocacy. And as a commissioner, I was, for a while, the only African-American woman on the commission. And there was an African-American man on the commission. Another woman came on the commission, a sister, who I thought was an ally. And late night conversations and strategizing, and we're in this together. And when the deal went down, she was on the other side. I don't have to name her name,
no.
but
Okay.
that's the truth of what happened. So I think the next generation gets confused into thinking that you can just look at a person and they look like us and we think that we're in solidarity. But we have to really recognize people's agendas, and racism as an agenda is about what quality of society we're going to have. And we now have what another friend of mine said, we now have the Negroization of America. There's a lot of other people who are caught up in the structure that has been set up. So we can also be misled sometimes into thinking that racism is the only problem, but it's a systemic problem of white supremacy, power, and control. It is here in the United States, and it's global. And if we only focus on a little narrow part of that, we will miss the bigger picture in terms of who's implementing it, who's benefiting from it, and how our mindset can be caught up looking at the wrong thing.
Okay, you said several things in there that I want you to expand on. The Negroization of America. And then you talked about, you gave an example, but I would like to know how you handled that example. So that others, if they're ever in that situation, they could say, this is one way I could handle it.
The curriculum battle in California was a national struggle.
Okay.
So one of the things I did was to hook up with people in other parts of the country who were trustworthy.
Okay.
As a scholar, the other thing I did was I wrote them up. I published material about what was going on because it was very difficult to see what the problem was. As one of the teachers participating in that process said, well, there's people of color jumping off the pages of these books. What is your problem? But the books were conceptually flawed. The ideas were incorrect and damaging to us, even though they had plenty of pictures of us in the books. So this is an analysis that has to be done, not just looking at the surface. And that's where scholarship comes in. Also solidarity with communities. So as the process went on, community people were empowered to also raise questions. So it's a kind of, both ends working together.
Okay, so you took a wider approach, broaden it out. Okay, Bill, you mentioned that you see the president of President Obama being attacked, and that hasn't been done before. And when we read your news magazine, it is a news magazine, isn't it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
Then we get various aspects of how having a black man in a leadership position, as I forgot who said, like the most powerful position in the free world, then how has that changed the scope of the articles that you're writing, the issues that come to you on a weekly basis?
It hasn't had an impact on what we write at all.
Okay.
We were, if you recall, we've been around for 30 years. And we were pretty defiant even when we started. We had the audacity to call the publication at the time, and wasn't even, I mean, Frank and I were not even thinking magazine. We were just, we had the audacity to call at the time, the newsletter Black Issues in Higher Education, because nobody else was doing it.
Okay.
Nobody, I mean, I won't say nobody else had the audacity, but we did. We did it. And we didn't seek approval from anyone. We were going after, and it wasn't, a lot of people felt that the publication was aimed primarily at historically Black colleges, which was totally false. We started out from day one going from Alabama to Alaska because it was something, it was a healing that the country, I wouldn't say a healing, the country still needs healing, but it was something that, it was an awareness that needed to be shared with those, in this case, in the higher education arena. In other words, there was a huge void in the higher education community, and that's what we set out to do by exposing, by publishing, and with the pen, it still remains powerful, whether you like it or not. It's one of the best ways to reach for us, for me, and my organization at the time, it was the best way to reach masses of people. Who, in some cases, we might have been described as having attitudes, but we were just doing what we felt was right, the right thing to do.
Okay. What, could you give an example of an act of racism or discrimination that you experienced in your publication career?
Well, first of all, I grew up in Alabama, so I've been around racism all of my life, as long as I can remember, whether it's small, whether it's professional, it doesn't matter. I could sit here and almost write a book about the racism that I have experienced. But the key thing in dealing with racism is, what do you do when you are faced with it or come in contact with it? What are your options? And the best option that I had, me and Frank had at the time, was, hey, I'm going to write about you. We had, as far as racism, if you're even starting this business 30 years ago, was indicative of what we had to experience. And when you think about it, it's not that what people call you, the names that they may call you, but it's also, it's how, when it comes to housing, when it comes to business or financial. For example, no financial institution wanted to talk to us in 1984. 1983, because the publication really came out in March of 1984, 30 years ago this month. Black Issues in Higher Education hit the street. But I was telling a colleague, a dear friend of mine, just this afternoon, as I look back, really can't reflect, I really can't, there are some aspects of racism that I believe incurred, but at the same time, there may have been just good business decisions. I mean, after all, who would want to go in a policy or take a risk in lending an organization money when they didn't have any business experience at all, and also looking at their profession, and that is journalism or publishing. It's an industry that really takes a lot to, I mean, if you're going to bite off that elephant, it's a lot that you want, you know, if you're going to do it. So I can't say that we experienced racism. I'm sure we did, but hindsight, there may have been some decent reasons behind it.
Okay. Dr. King, what does an endowed chair do?
As little as possible.
I'm loving that.
An endowed chair in some institutions has a large pot of money that they can draw on to do their work and to assist that institution achieve its mission. In the state of Georgia, the endowed chair that I hold doesn't have a lot of money associated with it. So one of the things I do is to reach out and collaborate with others and try to survive in a state that doesn't necessarily appreciate the importance of our African heritage and identity to the educational arena.
Okay.
I tried to say that in a delicate way.
Yes, you did. You were really kind of walking there. Okay. Wow. So are you the first woman to hold that position, or was it?
No, the chair that I hold was held previously by Dr. Lisa Delpit.
Okay. Okay. And how long has that chair been in existence?
I've been at Georgia State since 2004. She was there for 4 or 5 years, and then someone else held it before that, so maybe 20
Okay.
years.
So it's an ongoing thing. I'm trying to get it because I know there's some people in the audience who, and I was going to ask this later, but who are looking at both of you and who are saying, I want to do that. I want to lead an association like AERA. I want to own my own publishing company. So I would like for you guys to talk about what that means. How did you get to that position?
Well, I don't think that there's a cookie cutter formula.
Okay.
I think I'm a sociologist, and so I would say that we're looking at the factor of context, history, the historical moment.
Okay.
We're also looking at an individual and a career path. I mean, some things you can make happen because you're in the right place at the right time. Honestly, I do believe that the ancestors play a role. That's me. And so I also have colleagues who have said, in 5 years, I want to be here. And then 2 more years after that, I'm going to be there. And they've laid out their path and they followed it. My life and my career has not worked like that.
Okay. Okay. But so it's just like you are saying that there's no set path, there's no formula, as you just said.
I don't think there's a formula for being self-determining and self-empowered.
Empowering.
There probably is a formula for currying power and being selected to represent the power.
Right.
If you intend to remain conscious, and as the old folks say, if you intend to wake up clothed in your right mind, there is no path except to believe and follow and be grateful and try to be a servant of something that's larger than you. And when you do that, I believe things will come. It's not that it's going to be easy. We all have to pay prices. We're all bought and paid for in some sense. But again, that means we have to look at the historical moment that we're in. Some of the opportunities that we get come about because of something that happened before.
Right.
I have had a number of opportunities open up to me because whatever it was a hot potato. And they come and get you then. They didn't get you before when it I mean, look at our cities. Look at a number of opportunities that we get to be in leadership. It's when you got to come with a crowbar. So there's no formula, but I would say you need to be in solidarity with other people, not see this as a white hat, you all by yourself. The partnership that you establish is one example. And you need to be able to understand where you are. I started out by saying in the state of Georgia. This is the state of Georgia. That's not just words. That's a particular location. I worked in Louisiana. That's a particular location. I worked in New York. That's a particular location. I'm from California. That's a location. I left California because I got tired of teachers telling me, we have 57 languages spoken at this school. Why are you talking about black children?
And how did you deal with them?
Well, I did good work where I was, and then I looked around and realized that the administration was not as supportive of my work as it deserved. And I had to be willing to pick up and leave. My family picked up and left Oklahoma and came to California in the 1930s. So.
Okay, on the road.
Right.
Dr. Cox, how could you tell us about your job? What does a president do?
Well, the president doesn't do very much at all right now. He's been doing it for 30 years. So the young man sitting out there, my son, is doing most of the work right now, to be quite honest. But the primary responsibility of any news media is to disseminate news and information to its audience, and that's what we do, and we do a pretty good job of it. And it's not just every 2 weeks, not just twice a month. It's every day. We actually do more publishing electronically than we do in print on paper. Every day something is coming out, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, to stay up on what is happening. But let me say also that communications or journalism is not the easiest profession to. It's one of the riskiest profession that anyone could go into, especially unless you have very, very deep pockets. And even with those people with very deep pockets, we see the industry getting smaller instead of increasing and expanding, getting larger. For example, the New Orleans Picayune, the Montgomery Advertiser, the Huntsville Times, those were daily newspapers, and now they are being published maybe 3 times a week, 3 or 4 times a week. So it has had an impact. Now it's a very lucrative profession if you can get in there. The 2 things that saved us was primarily the platforms that we utilized. Number 1, a print, and also a digital platform. One of the key things about the digital platform, it allowed us to do a lot more than we could do in print. I could start 50 magazines electronically. All I need to do is pay for the writers. I need to find freelance writers, but I would never think to start a publication in print. And I'm very anxious to see what the new owner of the Washington Post is going to do. He's the owner of Amazon.com. And I think the entire industry may be taking a wait-and-see look in terms of where do we go in the future, because I don't know. I really don't know.
In Chicago, one of the daily newspapers, the Chicago Sun-Times, I think it was last year, fired their entire group of photographers. They have no photographers on staff, none. And that was a major controversial move at Columbia College, which is the Arts and Communications School, where you have students who are in photojournalism and students who are also in journalism. So it kind of, the discussion was around what are we teaching our students? And I have to say that those two departments they were moving the student, had moved rather into the digital age. So they were really being forward thinking in addressing the new print, the new publication area, the new way of getting material out. But it did shake up a lot of people in the city when you fire your entire group of photographers. No one was left standing, including a Black Pulitzer Prize winner, John H. White, who was like, everyone thought was just, I'm trying to be conscious here. Well, he was a very nice man, and he's a very extremely talented photojournalist. But to let him go, it was like, we are taking no prisoners. Okay, everybody goes. So the publication area is just like shifting right under our ground, under our feet. Yeah. Okay. I want to ask you guys, what sacrifices have you made for in your career? You talked about your family leaving Oklahoma and moving to California. That's one thing. But in your personal life, I don't mean to get too personal, but what sacrifices have you made to advance your career, or were made as your career advanced? You talked about living in city after city after city.
Well, if you ask my son, who is he's a medical doctor today, he reminds me that I wasn't home baking cookies.
Okay.
And I said, well, no, I taught you how to bake cookies. I don't look at my life with that vocabulary.
Okay.
So it's hard for me to point to something that I gave up or that I regret, or now, asking the people around me, maybe they would say,
okay.
But I don't feel it as a sacrifice. You work hard.
You work hard.
I'll give you one example of what could have been a sacrifice, but at that moment I was conscious so that it would not be a sacrifice. I mentioned the Curriculum Commission. I served on the Curriculum Commission. My children were small. They were like 7 and 9. And I would have to drive from East Palo Alto, where I live, to the capital, Sacramento. And I would have to get a neighbor or somebody to look after them. Again, okay, maybe that's a sacrifice, but I live in community, so that's something that was just normal for me. But because of the intense politics of that experience, I became very ill. And that year, I probably spent about $6,000 on medical tests, and I was diagnosed with some kind of terminal illness, And then one doctor told me that it was stress. And I said, stress? I don't get stress. But something happened, and I was going to resign from the commission because I was ill. And a woman who was on the commission was a Native American woman, but she looked like a white person. And the Republicans this is a state government process, so there were some Republicans involved. And because she was appointed by a Democratic administration, they were being mean to her. She was a classroom teacher. Nobody was helping her to figure out how you operate in this very public arena. So just human being to human being, I showed her how to deal with the microphones, what the acronyms were all about. And at one of the meetings, I said to her, well, I won't be back because I'm going to drop this work. I just can't keep up with it. And she said, oh, please don't do that. She said, they think I'm white. So they say all kind of things in front of me. And they said if they could keep you away from the social studies books, they would have it made. So at that moment, I made a decision. Do I want to go through life where illness determines what I'm able to do? And my decision was no. I am ill, but the doctor said it was stress. So I went home, called my kitchen cabinet together, and we decided that what I needed to do was to go public with all that had been going on. So I wrote a letter to, I just went through my Rolodex. You know, that was Rolodex time. I just went through the Rolodex and just every name and address, you know, just put that on the envelope. Probably 500 letters went out. And the stress went away. I was fine the next day.
That's all you had to do is just go through your Rolodex.
Send a letter out, get it off of me, go public. Because I think the stress was trying to be in partnership with a process that was fundamentally unjust and not working the way that it should have worked.
No, I wasn't being flipped.
Oh.
Okay, I was not being flipped because in my own life, I found that because I teach mainly African American studies, and I teach to some a mixed group, but my classes are predominantly filled with white students. So they come not knowing anything about beyond the stereotypes that they have experienced all their life. So when I have to teach Emmett Till or some Spike Lee film or August Wilson, like when he does Joe Turner's Come and Gone, I'm like, nah, I got to tell them about the Middle Passage. So what I found myself doing is cooking from scratch every day, practically, at least once or twice a week.
Sure.
And I can whip up cornbread and stuff and just beat the heck out of that. Or chop up a carrot, I'm killing somebody's head off of that, okay? So those kind of moments are really, really, one time we had, I had guests at my house and I'm in the kitchen Sunday just cooking full-fledged. I'm peeling, cutting corn off the cob and he's just walking, oh, Sheila, I didn't know you cooked. I'm like, no problem, baby. And he literally said, this is unusual for a professional woman to do this from scratch. I must go home and tell my wife, whatever. Okay, but that's how I deal with stress, okay? But I wasn't being flipped. And I was gonna ask you, how do each of you deal with these situations on a stressful, moments of stress in your career? David Taylor was here. He was the provost, I think at Dillard was his last position. But when he was at the University of Minnesota, David started exercising. He was, I don't know how old he is, but he looked like he got a body of a 20-year-old. He pumps iron. Okay, so that's what I wanted to find out. How do you deal with those moments of stress? Bill.
Well, I don't, I mean, I do a number of things. Not anymore. I used to run 3 to 5 miles a day, but not necessarily to reduce stress. I used to practice, I was very active in martial arts for 5 or 6 years.
Wow.
When I was well into my 40s. But I didn't, I'm pretty much able to deal with stress, I guess, just by putting it out there, writing about it.
Okay.
That's a big relief. And also, you know when you're doing something right at times, when people call to inquire about a story. Especially if they are in it and if they've been implicated at doing something wrong. They will call you
Okay.
and let you know. As just, I mean, this happened on a regular basis, on a pretty frequent basis for me, for the company, I would say. And a lot of those inquiries come directly to me, especially if I know the person, if we know each other. And we're talking presidents primarily. But the key thing, and this has nothing to do with stress, and I'll get back to your question, but the key thing is that not usually 9 times out of 10 when a person is calling to inquire about something or to lodge a complaint, it's because that they haven't done what they were supposed to do. And I say to everyone in this audience, if you have a reporter to call you, call him back or her back, or make yourself available for them, or just say no comment, because what you're doing, you're leaving yourself open. You're giving that person all the rights in the world to say, look, Dr. Jones was not available for contact. We called Dr. Jones, we never heard back from him or her. So, I mean, we have the freedom to just go. Jones was contacted, but we never heard back from him or her before the close of deadline for this story, before we went to press. It's easy. And sometimes we have put some institutions, sometimes I won't say, sometimes things that we have done have caused some institutions to come to us. Say, we are a player. We will begin to do better because we have, you don't have to know everything about higher education, but somehow you end up involved in everything. You know something, a little bit about everything, but not necessarily an expert on anything, and that's okay. You don't have to be, but just be knowledgeable and cognizant of what is taking place around you at all times. But as far as stress is concerned, I don't let this, just because you see the white hair here, it's not stress related. I don't let much bother me.
Okay.
I try not to.
Okay. I want to shift gears because I did mention that we were honoring Miri Baraka, and I know that within your life, you had to have encountered him at some point in your life. So could you speak about his contributions to society, or what you, any comments that you would like to make about him?
Well, I think the Black Arts Movement, which he was very much a key figure in, was and remains a part of our resources for consciousness, for our human development. He was, as I remember him, a strong voice of self-determination as well as a creative person. The first time I saw him, I was an undergraduate student, and he came, as I mentioned, to Stanford, and they said he was going to present a poem, and he went up on stage, and his poem was to just repeat white, 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 white. And this went on, and it was the most liberating moment that I could think of. And then I also remember something that he said that I often quoted. He asked, "Who shall survive America?" Very few Negroes, black people of course, very few Negroes, and no colored people at all.
He was an amazing man. He was fearless in his concept of black determination, of self-determination. He remains, I often say that August Wilson is my literary hero, but even August Wilson is great and all that wonderful accolades that you could give him. even he had to say that Amiri Baraka was the man, the force that really undergirded a lot of his work, all of his work. Among his 4 Bs, Baraka is one of them. Bill, you want to?
No, I had a chance, had an opportunity to meet him on several times. We covered him in Black Issues in Higher Education, but probably the closest I got to him was when we owned the magazine Black Issues Book Review.
Okay.
And not only with Amiri, but just about every notable African American, a black person, writer at the time, I had the good fortune of spending some time with. But for him, and especially Haki Mahabuti, a person that both of us know quite well, is a dear friend of mine. And through him and Amiri, I recall a retreat in upstate New York at a place where I really got to know Amiri quite well. The thing about him, and you said it, Sheila, a few minutes ago, he was a small man. He wasn't a big guy.
Not at
He
all.
was a small guy, but powerful. When he was at Rutgers, he was driving people crazy up there. If you were white, he would drive you crazy at the time. I mean, that was just him and his style. But I saw him, Amiri was from, I guess I can use the term, quote unquote, the old school, way back when, who carried all this racism and who experienced the whole ball of wax, and he was just fed up with it. And the way I still say that, in a way it's good for me, is to be able to write about it, to reach people, to expose what people ought to be, you think people ought to be reading about, you think people are interested in.
Yeah, I remember he came to my campus about 2 years ago, and he gave a very powerful, I didn't even see y'all over here, he gave a very powerful presentation. And he had a friend of his heard that he was in the city, and he brings his stand-up bass. I think he took the bus down there, downtown, because the college is downtown. So he brings his stand-up bass to hang out and perform with Amiri Baraka. So, it was a wonderful presentation that they had where Baraka was reading Somebody Blew Up America, and the guy was playing the stand-up bass, and to see them rehearse for about 5 minutes backstage of going over, this is what I want you to hit this note, I want you to hit that note, I want you to expand here, and then I'll lay here. And I was like, wow, it was remarkable to see. So after the performance, after the reading, a group of us took him out to, we wanted to take him out to dinner. So he wanted to go to Buddy Guy's Blues Club, which is right across the street from the Hilton and right across the street from our campus. So a group of us went into the door, and I'm thinking like, this is not a good move. This ain't gonna work up in here. I knew what kind of people attended Buddy Guy's Blues Club. So we walk into the room, and it's filled with white people. And Amiri says, I can't go in there. I just cannot go in there. This is a shame. And he backs out and goes over to the Hilton. And I was like, and then he and his friends, they hold court with some other friends who came over. That was what was supposed to happen. He was not supposed to see white people performing the blues after he just talked about how black people was experiencing the blues. It was not supposed to happen. I want to show this clip of him. This is a clip from the Lannan Poetry Foundation. It's him talking about how he came to write, period, and the musical influence of his work.
This is about my beginnings as a writer, and it's called The Beginnings, Words as Notes and Beats. My writing came out of me without too much formal grunting and extrapolation of the dry. I was first more interested in music, naturally enough. African American life is rhythm-wrapped. Its social context, its history, the living rooms and kitchens and churches and street corners pushing sweet blues afternoon and evening. We are abundantly chorded, and our syncopated walks harmonize us to the blue future like laughter from the only thing bigger and warmer than our hearts, our soul. I'd taken all kinds of music lessons too, thrice pianistic, trumpet, drums, plus drawing and painting classes too. I guess our mama wanted us to be close to or well acquainted with art instead of aren't. I had bands. I sang in choruses. I hung out all night, traveling light in and out of joints to hear Larry Darnell and Ruth Brown and the Orioles and the Ravens and Little Esther and Lynn Hope and Bull Moose Jackson and Louis Jordan and Nat King Cole and Tuesday Mambos at Lloyd's Manor and later Bird and Diz and Getz and Kenton and Miles and his Monkness Thelonious. Duke and Billy and Ella, my parents always played. Plus my grandparents loved old blues. We had concerts of spirituals, and Sarah Vaughan's mama and my grandmama, Nana, put together a gospel chorus for the middle-class Negroes at Bethany Baptist Church each and every Sunday. My grandfather used to promise me a silver dollar to memorize Weldon Johnson's The Creation, and the slim volume with the fantastic Aaron Douglas woodcuts has always sat heavy in the breakfast of my poetic sensibility. My mother, on the other hand, got me to memorize Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, which I recited on his birthday annually for years in a Boy Scout suit. But then, all of a sudden, it was college going-away time, and after being the fly in the proverbial buttermilk at Rutgers, I found Howard and lifelong friends and Sterling Brown, who taught me the music as history and analysis. And you know what? I put my trumpet down. Although for sure there is nothing I love so much or identify my very soul so deeply with as music. Word, make no missed snake. And even the first formal verse I loved was in the music, the blues. City and country. I used to walk down the halls of my high school reciting Larry Darnell quietly at the top of my voice. You're right up on top now. You want to be free. Why, you fool, you poor, sad, worthless, foolish fool. It was the poetry, the form and feeling of the blues that first moved me word-wise. For instance, if you don't love me, tell me so. Don't tell other people. I'm the one to know. Or, it's raining teardrops from my eyes. Or, you made me lose my happy home. You stole my love and now you gone. Or, you way out in the forest fighting a big old grizzly bear. How come you ain't out in the forest? I'm a lady. They got lady bears out there. And with them, add the Langston Hughes poems and the Defender and a copy of the Rubaiyat they sent my mother from the Book of the Month Club, where I also got Black Boy and Native Son and the Collected Poe and Frank Yerby. In grammar school, I had a short-lived comic strip with a feature called The Crime Wave. Everybody was walking around robbing people, saying, give me your money. In my senior year, I took the only creative writing course I ever had, hanging out with those two friends of mine who also wanted to be writers and imitating Poe and erected brownly by Yerby, terrified by Wright. Now suddenly I was writing some little jive sonnets and cellophane love jingles after Herrick and Shakespeare and Suckling, and then reading Joyce and Pound and Eliot and Stein, etc. An old high school buddy, Alan Polite, I ran track with, a real hero athlete I looked up to and longed to know how to imitate, had gotten out of school and gone over to the village to live. Somehow he summoned us over to his all-white with yellow trim Bedford Street apartment. He was a writer now, he said. I looked at the neat piles of legal pads, the walls of books, the smiling, graceful woman, his wife, now the writer, Charlene Polite, and seeing that life and that look in his eyes and already idealizing him, I knew that's where I was headed. Yeah, that's where I wanted to go. And the music? Did I leave it? Hell no. Check the writing, any of it. Music still got me going. This is called The Mind of the President.
Okay, the rest of this
And this was written for the other president, Reagan,
we're talking about.
but the continuity is so astonishing that I thought that, especially now,
If
the
you want
man
a copy
has.
of it, just see me. I'll send it to you because it's pretty good. But I really love the first part of that. I think it's the quintessential. It's the unknown part of Amiri Baraka that you aren't used to seeing, because he was he's a little bitty short man. It was amazing to actually see this. When you read his work, it's so powerful, and you think that he's this. You envision rather that he's this huge figure. And then he comes out and it's like dynamite, like this little package of dynamite, okay? Really, really good. So we're going to open the floor up for question and answers right now. So do you guys have any questions?
Or
From?
comments?
I can't see. Oh, okay. Is the mic behind you that's coming?
I just have a question for Dr. Cox. You are a very independent and powerful person, powerful personality. Frank Matthews, very independent and very powerful. How did y'all get along for so many years?
Well, first of all, I couldn't ask for a better person in the world than Frank Matthews. Frank and I we recognize our strength and our weaknesses, where Frank may be very strong, I may be weak in an area. Where I'm strong, Frank may be weak. So we have been able to maintain this relationship by letting each other focus on his strength. And this doesn't mean that the relationship has been perfect for the last 30 years, because if you're in a relationship, you're going to have disagreements. But the bottom line is how do you come out of it? And I think we have done exceptionally well. And I believe, and I know that Frank is one of the best friends that I have to this day.
Okay.
Hello, Dr. Potter from Grambling State University. This question is for you, Dr. King. How have you dealt with, during your time in higher ed, dealt with issues such as micromanagement? And I'd like to know specifically in regards to, I think you talked about from when you were an administrator, dealing with maybe a lateral administrator maybe, but how would you deal with that level of lack of leadership when you're not the chief administrator?
Well, lack of leadership can take many forms. Micromanaging is one way that some leaders manage. But I'll talk about the lack of leadership that I've experienced in a particular context, and then how you seek the moment to bring your own gift or concern or issue forward. When I was Associate Vice Chancellor for Academic Affairs and Diversity Programs at the University of New Orleans, your state. In New Orleans, one of our faculty members was writing articles to the Gambit, the local paper, about his research on Black people's genetic inferiority and women's inferiority, which he measured by breast size. He was an economist in the School of Business on our campus, but he was writing about these issues. And the black community was not having it. And there was some pushback. And the chancellor, I saw the chancellor at an event on campus, and I said, you know, there's some concern about what's happening and how the university's reputation is being called into question because of what our professor is publishing. And he said, oh, we're not going to deal with that. Just, you know, it'll go away. Don't worry about it. Now, I'm the HNIC for diversity, so this is on my plate. And he kept writing and publishing things. So the black Catholic schools in New Orleans got together and said that they were no longer going to recommend any of their students who graduated from high school to go to UNO. And they put that in the paper. So then the chancellor came and knocked on my door, and he said, what was that you were talking about? So my answer is, be ready with your program or with your opportunity, because you may not be able to get it on the first pass, but you're still there. And so you want to, I don't want to say be positive, you want to be proactive in your response. And what I had suggested to the chancellor that we do was that we hold a teach-in. And that's what he had rejected. So he's knocking on my door saying, what was that you was talking about, a teach-in? And I said, yes, here's the plan. And it involved a partnership with SUNO, Southern University at New Orleans, and UNO, and we invited scholars to come and invited that professor to be a panelist on the program. He declined, but that's the opportunity that you're looking for, to do your work the way you think it needs to be done in spite of resistance or lack of leadership. That's not you, that's the institution not living up to what it needs to do. But, you know, James Brown said, money won't change you, but time will take you out.
Are there any other questions? Question over there. Oh.
I have a question or a series of questions. You can answer any part or all, because I have several concerns. We'd like to hear your perspectives. I'm Lucy Rubin. I'm professor of the practice of business administration at Duke University. But one, what are the implications, in your opinion, of globalization and higher education, particularly in terms of participation in the professoriate? That is one concern. Now, I'll try not to put all of them out here today. And then the other one is, in a world where we have growing inequality, some access, but we still have, for example, fewer than a third of Americans holding a college degree. And we also have, I was at a business conference recently, and we said 86% of the people who try to get doctorates in business do them in proprietary institutions, and many then find that they cannot get a route into the professoriate from that. And that, in part, I believe, and I would be happy to hear your comments, results from, again, a lack of entree into the culture and the changing norms in a global informational age for higher education. I'll just stop with those concerns. Okay.
I think that was a question for me. I can't see you because of the lights, but was that directed at me, for me? Oh, okay, all right. Globalization and higher education has upside and downside. There's some downside in that some institutions are recruiting people of African ancestry from other countries and counting them in their diversity numbers. So you have Caribbean, African ancestry people, you have people of African ancestry from the continent, and that's part of our global reach. But then they get added to the university's diversity number, and you're not bringing folks in from Chicago or East Oakland or wherever else access has been limited. So that's I think, a downside. If you are an administrator in that context and you want to advance equity for African Americans who have had less access, then that becomes an opportunity for leadership. I saw that at the University of New Orleans. Again, I'm the HNIC, and I found a postdoc program in the chemistry department that had a whole freedom train for Chinese chemists who didn't speak English, couldn't even fill out the papers, but they had a carbon copy, and they would just pass it on to the next one. And I'm asking that department, why can't they recruit any African American chemists, students in chemistry? And that turned into an opportunity to look at the policy system-wide, because I brought that issue forward, and it ended up producing some policy recommendations that were more equitable. We also have issues of professors from other countries who are teaching perhaps in HBCUs or other institutions, and that's good, but they may not be as adept with English as they need to be. So if you are an administrator in that institution, then you've got some faculty quality issues on behalf of the students to take into, to deal with. So it's a, you know, it's sometimes a complicated issue. You want to be fair, you want to be inclusive, but you also have to look at what the context is for the institution.
We're in a global society already, then there are implications of how we educate, how we get acclimated, and what we do. I just came back, for example, I don't do this every year, but I came back for 3 weeks to South Africa, visiting different universities and trying to connect both sides with us. What are we going? We are in a global society, whether or not this reached all of us. And what are our implications for how we are educated, how we can make sure we're educated with everybody else, and can operate in a global society, as professors, as students, as communities. That's kind of.
I don't think I'm contradicting what you said, but what I do want to underscore in my experience is that sometimes our institutions want to jump to global, and they're not as concerned about all of us getting to global. So there's some inequity in that has to be articulated in terms of the university's commitment to justice. And sometimes you can put the global on it, shine it up, and it looks really great. But somebody has to ask the question, is this just for those people as well as for people here? Because I don't think the Chinese students in my example were getting an adequate education, but just because they had the paper from the US, they were able to take that back to China. So if we are in a situation to help shape a mission or to help shape how a program is going to be implemented that's going to be global, then we have an opportunity to bring our full selves to the process and not forget about our own communities because it's a global context. I've been working in Brazil for 20 years, and I've seen the evolution of their work there, and they benefited. The Black movement in Brazil benefited from what we had gone through here. But it took somebody to be able to talk with them about that, not just represent a gloss over what the United States represents. My last comment, I went to the UN Decade of Women's Conference in 1985 in Kenya. I was a professor at Santa Clara then, and sat in on a session with Angela Davis. And Angela Davis was hitting hard about the racism in the United States. And my consciousness at that moment led me to say, oh, ooh, does she have to make us look so bad over here? So we have to have the orientation that will allow us to do the work that needs to be done on behalf of a better world, not just a limited vision of what an institution may want to represent itself as.
There was a question over here.
Hi. My name is Tamika Ferguson. I'm a doctoral student at Indiana University. I'm really blessed and well positioned to have a great group of peers who we can kind of just chat and discuss the struggles that we have as doctoral students, especially of color. But when you made a statement earlier, Dr. King, you said to be a part of something larger than yourself. One of the things that my peer group and I always are discussing is the various oppressions that we're gonna face. So we talk about what we're currently facing, whether it's income because of a graduate stipend or being black or being male, being a female, but we come to these conferences and we hear the stories of people that are the veterans and well-experienced that have tenure, and we then begin to talk about the oppressions that are coming. What's a way to navigate that thought? You know, could you maybe share some experiences about how you've navigated various oppressions at different levels of your career? Because it becomes daunting for us when we look to you and we cite your work or we read your magazine and we want to achieve that, but then we hear about all the bad stuff too. So
I think that's a really important question. I'm glad you asked it. I'll answer very briefly in two ways. When my daughter went to middle school, she went from a black community to a segregated, wealthy white school, and she encountered racism on the first day. And she came back home and she said to me, "I thought you guys took care of all that." And that was an opportunity for her to join what her generation will contribute to making a school experience better. I have another student who said to me, she's got her doctorate, she said, "Dr. King, looking at everything that you went through, I just don't think I can do it." So just the other day, I was doing a workshop with some teachers, and I told them truthfully what I often reflect on when I think about the difficulties that we have in our profession. And this is true. What I reflect on is a story that I read about W.B. Du Bois when he was here in Atlanta teaching at Atlanta University. And this was at the time of the race riot in 1906. And Du Bois was on his way down to the Atlanta Journal and Constitution. He was going to protest the way the newspaper was presenting African Americans and how that had contributed to the race riot. And he passed by a butcher shop. And in the window of the butcher shop, he saw the knees of the black man who had been lynched the day before. The knees were cut off and they were in the window along with the other meat. And he turned around and went back to his office at Atlanta University and went back to work. So I say to myself, I have much more to work with. I have more tools. I have more knowledge. I have more resources. And I'm standing on the shoulders of those who have died and who have made sacrifices, supreme sacrifices for me to be here. So I don't spend a lot of time worrying about what's going to be. I just do what I feel I need to do in the moment, knowing that I will have the help that I need because I've been bought and paid for.
On that, we will end. Okay. We cannot go any further after that. I really want to thank both of you for allowing us the privilege to hear your testimonies, to give us strength to take back to our campuses, and so we can continue the fight. That image of him actually seeing the knees of someone who was just hung, that's a very powerful image. And I'm sure all of us will understand that and will continue to do the fight. Okay. So now is the time for us to present the awards. I want to mention to you that Amiri Baraka, we're going to forward his award to his family. His son is running for the mayor of the city of Newark, New Jersey. And it's very close to election time, so I'm sure that's why we asked for a family member to come and represent his father and to accept the award. But we will forward this award to him. And it reads, the AABHE Distinguished Cultural Award presented to Amiri Baraka, educator, author, cultural critic, social theorist, provocateur of thought. March 14th, 2014, Jacqueline D. Gardner, President. Ladies first. Okay, so would you stand, please? As you have heard today, we this is a stole that we give all of our honorees. On one side, it has our logo, the AABHE logo, and this is a Adinkra symbol that means leadership.
Oh, thank you.
Education, okay.
Now I got one.
And this award is again from AABHE. It's the AABHE Advocacy Award presented to Joyce E. King for your distinctive leadership as an educational intercessor.
Oh,
March 14th, 2014, Jacqueline D. Gardner, President.
Thank you very
You're so
much.
welcome.
Thank you. I'm very honored and very grateful. Thank you.
Okay. For you, Dr. William Bill Cox.
Yes, ma'am.
We have given Bill Cox and Frank Matthews stoles before. They were one of our first people to get a stole from us. It was during our first summit in Savannah, Georgia. But both he and Frank Matthews will get a little mini stole, okay? And it would be placed in this box, okay? But the inscription reads, the American Association of Blacks in Higher Education, honors diverse issues in higher education for 30 years of dedicated service in higher education, March 14th, 2014. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Can I say something?
Yes.
First of all, thank you very, very much. And just wanted to say that there's no way that we could be around for 30 years without the support and encouragement coming from all of you. So we really appreciate that. And thanks again.
You're so welcome. Okay. Before we leave, there's a few housekeeping notes, okay? There will be a reception following immediately. It's downstairs in the lobby in 11. It's from 6 o'clock to 7:30. And here's the deal. There will be heavy food and good shrimp and heavy food. A cash bar, but free punch, okay? We would like to invite you to come to tomorrow's events. There will be a continental breakfast in the lobby from 7:30 to 8. That will be followed by the roundtable presentations that start at 8 o'clock. And you should check your schedule for the sessions that you would like to go to. And please do attend these sessions because the breakout, some people specifically requested that they do breakout because they want that feedback so that they can just like re-envision or whatever input you could get them to help guide and reformulate their presentation. That would be very helpful to them. And then following that would be the wrap up for next year's event. Roland is coming to the podium to make a special announcement, I want to remind you again that next year's conference will be held in South Carolina, Charleston, April 9th through the 11th. And we look forward to seeing you there. Okay, Roland?
First, I want to add my appreciation to our panelists for their great insight. I want to thank you for that. And Bill has been a mentor. We've talked, I remember over the years when we were getting started with this organization, I'd go to DC in the area, and we'd go to lunch and have conversations, and he would hold court. he and Frank. So I wanted to, again, thank you for that. How many first-time non-members are in the room? Could you raise your hand? First-time non-members, okay. We have a deal for you. The board members have gotten together. We've been hearing about the good feedback for the conference, and we've been inspired. So what we are offering is a membership. If you would become a member within by the end of this month, we could do it here at the conference. Your membership would go through December 2015. So you'd get some. So basically, you get on board now, and your membership would last for that long. So that's a one-time deal, and we'll hear more information about it. We're going to send emails out to everyone, but I think if you go to the registration desk, is it still up?
No.
It'll be up tomorrow. So tomorrow, you can go in, and if you can do that now, get it done, and you can. And then that includes subscriptions to both the Negro Education Review and Diverse. As a part of the membership, that's $180.
That's
Okay.
good.
Does that make sense?
That's a good deal. Okay. All right. We are adjourned, and I thank you for coming.
Thank you. You did a great job.
You're welcome.
Joyce, nice.
Yes, sir.
Nice.
Very nice to meet
Yeah.
you too. And congratulations again on your